If you're anything like me, you probably haven't really understood where the find method fits. It is pretty simple. However, how can it be useful? And for that, in this video we'll be covering what is the find method, where you should want to use it, some real-world examples, so you can already start applying this method into your own projects, and also compare it with its brother, the FindIndex method. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. The find method is another iteration method, just like the for each, as an example, and it basically searches for the very first occurrence in an array that satisfies the provided callback function conditions, while finally returning the value of the element that satisfies such condition. So let's understand its syntax and arguments. Let's start by creating here an array of numbers. Now let's find a specific number inside of this array. So we need to put the numbers, use the dot connotation, and put the method, the find method. And this way we are already using the find method. However, there are two problems. The first one, pretty simple, we always receive a value from the find method. So we should probably create here a variable, could be even number, because you are going to search for the first even number. And to properly use the find method, you will also need to send a callback function as an argument. And that function is going to be probably an arrow function that's also receive multiple parameters. The first one, it's the most used one, which could be the number, the item, the product, the person, the element, but we are going to stick with number, because we usually put this name here as the singular of the array. That's going to be the item for every single iteration. This is going to be the 1, then the 3, then the 5, then the 7, then the 9. You get the idea, right? And right after that, what we are going to do is the arrow function thing, and since you are going to return it instantly, so the first instruction is going to be the return, we don't really need the return keyword. So we are just going to stick with what we want to return, which is going to be the number that is going to be divided by 2 and ends up being equals to 0. This is a pretty simple algorithm that's used to understand if a number is even or not. And with this, the first time an element is true to that, the first even number that we find, it's the one that's going to be stored in the even number, and then stop the iterations. Let's console log it. Console.log even number. As you can see, we got the 10, because the 10 is the first even number of the array. However, imagine that you don't really have even numbers inside of the array. Undefined. This method doesn't really return undefined, but since it was not really defined, it doesn't return anything, so the even number ends up being undefined if we don't find anything. It's a little bit complex, but let's understand how you can go around undefined. Imagine that you do find the even number. So if you find, you can put even number. You can either say that it's different from undefined to specify that it exists, or simply leave it like this. This way, you can already see that there's something inside of it. Now we can console log, we found the number. Let's put even number inside of it. Or else, we didn't really find it, so in this case we are going to receive couldn't find it. However, if you put again an even number, we are going to find that even number. Remember that I talked about the other parameters that your callback function could get, because if you only use one, you don't even need the parentheses, but with more, you should put the parentheses for the arguments, for the parameters. And the others that you can have, it's the index and the array itself. You can always receive the index and the array for each iteration. Nobody really uses it, so just stick with a singular item, which is common in every iterative method of arrays. Now let's get to the real-world examples, in which we are going to do some exercises, some mini projects that we usually would when working, so you can apply this sample of code in your projects. The first one would be something like authenticate with some registered users. We have an array with 3 different objects, and those objects have the ID, the name, the email, and the password of each user. And the first thing that you would make, it's a function that would be called to authenticate the user. So let's create it, function, or you can use the arrow function as well. The function is going to be login or authenticate user. It's really up to you. I'm going to put login because it's faster. And then the login is going to receive the both email and password as parameter. And now the only thing that's left is creating the code. It's creating the logic inside of it. The first thing, and the most important thing here, is going to be the user that you're going to store. So const user. which is going to be filled with the registered users.find method. So if we find a user, the user is going to be stored in that variable here. So how do we find a user? It's pretty simple, guys. If you come here and write user, which is the single parameter, could be also item, but user is more normal, the arrow function, and then the return. Don't need a return, just need to put the instruction. So we are going to make it, the user it's right, it's correct, in the case that the email is completely equals to the user, to the current user dot email. So if the current user, this user here, as an example, has this email equals to the email that we are going to receive here, if those two emails are equals, it's good. The half of the problem is already solved. However, we have another condition. We also need to have the same password. So user.password, if it is equals to the password provided by the user, now we are talking. Now the user was actually created. And then here comes the if again, which depends on the find. If we find the user, we do something. If we do not find something, we don't do anything. We just say that it's incorrect. So if user, you're going to console.log, and you're going to put this time these ones, welcome, and then you need to put the name of the person or something like that. It's not really important what you do. It's just so you know that you got the user, so you can show its name. And if we didn't find anything, so if it isn't find, you can console log our answer. Something like incorrect email or password or invalid. It's really up to you. And then can you guess how you are going to use this function here, the login function? We could receive through a server, through a form, right? When you submit and you receive information, or through the DOM, in which the user writes the values inside the input boxes, and then you just read it through document.querySelector or get element by ID and get the value. It's really up to you. However, we are going to use static values. We are just going to put two strings. Of course, this is saying that incorrect email or password because we are not really specifying anything. So let's specify Alice's email, and let's also specify Alice's password. And when we get both correct, we can say that Alice, the user, is welcome. Of course, if you have something wrong, either the password or the email, this is not going to work. And with this find method, based on this find method, we could create a function that would verify if the user actually exists and the data is correct, the email and the password, and then welcome the user. And if you want to learn more about arrays in JavaScript, make sure to click in that playlist there, so you can understand not only the arrays, but also the methods that the arrays have in JavaScript. Another example that I brought to you guys, it's like an online grocery, an online shop with products. So you can write for a product and then buy it. You are not going to buy it, we are just going to search for it. The only products are fruits because we are really healthy and we want to get stronger and healthy. So only fruits, the apple, banana, orange and pear. Same thing as the other one, an array of objects, and I have IDs, the names, the price. It's okay, it's all fine. We are going to do something similar. We are going to also create a function, or in this case we are going to create here through the arrow function. So the name of this function can be search product, which is going to be equals to these parameters. Which parameters are we going to have in this method, in this function? We are going to use the name, but instead of writing actually name, we are going to search query, because query it's what you write to search for something. In this way it looks more professional. And then curly braces. Since the find method is the star of this video, we are going to use the find method. Let's create a product, and this variable here is going to store wherever comes from the products.find. Instead of this find, product, which is going to be the item of every iteration, and now the product.name can or not be equals to the query. By doing this, we can already verify if the product exists. If it does, console.log, I'm going to put the name and the product or price. And if we do not find something like that, we just put else. And this function is going to basically, by finding something, it will show the name and the price of the respective product. And if we do not find, we are just going to say that what the user wrote was not found. So let's try to use the function search product. We could also use the DOM or a form or something like that. However, we are simply going to put static values. And what you are going to search, okay, it's undefined because it didn't send anything. If we send something, we are going to write apple. The apple is available for 99 cents. The orange, let's try the orange out. The orange is available for 75 cents. But what if I write orange with a small o? Orange was not found. It's because the search is currently case sensitive. It's not because of the strictly equals, because the strictly equals simply compares the value and the data type. In this case, the problem here is that the product name is like this, and the query is like we wrote. The only way to make it non-case sensitive is by applying one of two methods. The two lowercase, it always adds the locale, I don't understand this. And then the parentheses, and put the same thing to the other one. So the both of them are going to be converted into lowercase. So if they are both lowercase, when comparing, they are fine to go. They are both the same, as you could see here already. Or if you make them both uppercase. I usually recommend to lowercase because it's simply faster and it's more usual. But then we get another problem here. Imagine that I don't really know how to write orange. I write simply orange. Was not found. And if you want to understand better how to fix this problem, I have a video around there about product filtering, both writing in a search bar or simply applying specific filters such as price and that stuff. If you want, make sure to check that video. But in this video, we are going to keep it really simple. We are simply going to use the includes, so we are going to cut this from here and put includes in here. So if the product name includes the thing that we just wrote in the query, so we don't really need to write the whole name, we are going to end up finding it anyways. Of course, there are still a lot of things that you can do to make this find better, because if I put A and N, it's going to find banana, but orange is AN as well. But that's something for another video. There are a couple mistakes that people usually make when working with the find method, so make sure to pay extra attention to these ones. The first thing, it's the return type of the callback function. Let's check it out. Let me make this more simple, like product.name is equals to the query. And what is this? This is a return, but we are not returning the name nor the query. We are returning the type of data that ends up being here. As an example, if it is true, if the names are equal, we are going to receive a boolean value. That's going to be equals to, in this case, true. But if the name and the query are not equals, we are going to end up receiving a false. And these two, the false and true, are the only data types that you should be returning in the callback function of the product find method. Because other way, it will simply not work. It will never find anything for the product variable in this case. Another thing that you can check here is the strict equality. When using the three equals that are available in a lot of dynamic programming languages, such as JavaScript and PHP, it's really nice to have the strict equality. Because in the case that you are comparing objects and a specific attribute called inStock as an example, and you say that it's true or false, what could happen is comparing a true with a true or with a false and, well, confusing the JavaScript. So it's always good to have the strict equals. Imagine that you have here a string of two. It can really get a lot confusing. So always try to use the strict equality when you are using the equals comparison between stuff, especially numbers and boolean values. Also, try to avoid changing the values of the array, because this find method, it's used not to change the array, nor to iterate the array. It's just to find a value, to find an element and return its value. And just leave it at that. Don't go trying to change the values of the original array with a find method. You should also consider the search order. And after coming back a little bit, you can see that the N is available as a banana. But if you reverse the array, right here, products.reverse, it is a function, a method for arrays. It's not product, it's products. What's going to happen is we are going to firstly reverse it, the array, then we are going to find, so instead of starting from the top, we are going to start from the bottom, and we are going to find the orange before then the banana. And then reverse again the products, the array, so it gets as it was originally. Using the reverse method in big arrays can be troublesome for your computer, for the user, for a lot of people. So try to avoid using the reverse method with large sets of data. Now there are two other things about the return value of the find method. The first one is always make sure to use this if to verify if the variable is different from undefined. If it is defined, so you can use it properly. And if you don't find, you can also say that you can't find, you didn't find something. And the find method only returns one value. If you want more values, make sure to use the array filter method of JavaScript. Because the filter method is basically a find method, but instead of returning the first value, returns all the values inside of an array. That way, making it possible for you to make a condition such as this, to find all the products that has those letters that you put, as an example the N, and instead of receiving only the banana or the orange, you would receive both the banana and the orange. Look at how great it could be, right? And finally, a double check. Verify everything. Try to put here different couple values that can be expected and try to make sure that it doesn't break your program. After making a couple tests, yes, then you are ready to go. But always make sure to test it a little bit. And now, to make sure that you don't commit any mistakes at all, you not only know the tips that I just gave you, but you are also going to check the browser support of this beast, the find method. And the array find, you can see here array.prototype.find, it's the right find method of JavaScript. And as you can see, we have a global of 96% support. Of course, you might want to go to the desktop or mobile. Mobile is good, desktop is good, all-tracked even better, but for all users, you can have the 96.32%, which is pretty nice. The only ones that don't really support it's the IE, Internet Explorer, Opera Mini. Well, Opera Mini doesn't do anything, it's not that bad. Okay guys, but yes, you can use the find method in any application that you are going to make. But now, there's another thing that I want to talk with you about, guys, which is the brother of the find method, the find index. And it is pretty intuitive. It's basically a find, but instead of returning the value, it returns the index. The both of them are going to make the conditioning with the value, but the return value is different. Let's try a real-world example for the FindIndex method, which is really nice to use when you want to delete something from an array. And for that, we have a couple of people. The people has a name and an ID. You can use the name, but the name can be different, so to delete and to edit stuff, it's usually good to access it through ID. You can receive the ID through the DOM or through databases, but it doesn't matter. We are simply going to receive the ID statically. And you are going to delete the Jane, because the Jane was a little bit mean to me, so I'm going to remove her from my life. The next thing that you need to do is const index remove, because the ID, it's what we receive from the user, it's what the user can see. Even if the user can see the ID, it just clicks on a button and the program associates the ID and sends the ID to remove. Then we need to specify that the index to remove is going to be the people dot connotation find index, not the find. And this bad boy here is going to return the index. But how is it going to do? Inside, you just need to put the callback function just as you do with the find method, and could be person, could also be item, or anything you want, but you're going to use person because it's in singular, it's better. And then we are going to return one instruction, so return keyword get out, and we are going to search for the ID to remove. Person.id is completely equals to the ID to remove. And now we are not really going to make a verification if it is undefined or not. The find index returns a different thing. We are not going to verify if the index remove is undefined or not, because the find index returns another thing. If the find index doesn't find any element of the array which value satisfies a condition, what you are going to do is completely different from -1, because it can't be -1. If it is -1, it's because you didn't find anything. But if we found, it's different. Or you can simply put bigger than -1. It's faster. Then you just need to do the splice method, which is used in the array, so people.splice. And then inside here, we are going to put two parameters. The index to remove and the number of elements to delete. So here, the delete count. 1 is enough. Then the only thing that you need to do is making an else condition, which is simply... Oh, we don't even need an else. We just need to console log it at final. Console.log. And then put the people again, so we can see the people after deleting everything. And as you could see here, we are receiving 3 items, 3 objects. But we have here 1, 2, 3, 4. Haha! The Jane was removed. She was mean to me the other day, so if she's mean, I don't want her in my life. And with this, you could see that we could use the splice method with the find index to remove an object from inside an array. And it's an object. That's why you couldn't really use the people.indexOf. because index of only verifies one thing, not a person, not ID. If you put ID to remove here, it is going to compare it with an object, and obviously the ID, the one, is different from the whole object. It might be also to use the index of, but it can be a little bit harder to work with. The find index in this case is better for objects and arrays inside of arrays. It's more intuitive. This is pretty much everything you need to know about the find and FindIndex method in JavaScript. If you also want to learn more about arrays in JavaScript, click in this video. That video, right there, click on it. And finally, thank you for watching the video until here. If you still have any doubts, leave a comment that I will help you out. I'm Diogo Veigas and I'll see you in the next video.